I love the live-action Witcher series, and I might devote a video to each season so far because they too follow the 29-point story structure. Nevertheless, I'm not entirely sure why I put off watching Kwang Ilhan's 2021 animated prequel, The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf. It was a mistake I took the opportunity to correct. This was a fun watch the first time through, and an even more fascinating watch the second time. There was way more subtext packed into nearly every line and image than I first noticed. The timestamps for each sequence can be found in the comment section if you'd like to watch along. Now, let's begin. We start, as always, with a focus on our protagonist, specifically their personality, their inner conflict, and their situation. A young singer introduces us to legends of monsters and worse. Then we meet Vesemir on the hunt for a particularly nasty creature, whose cavalier mastery as a warrior is matched by his dialogue. Next, we examine where, why, and how our protagonist exists in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. Creatures begin to exhibit strange new abilities, which does little to soften the callousness of Witchers to human plight, and mistrust of Witchers deepens amid pretty much the rest of society. Then a brief event happens, one that's never happened before. It's destined to lead all the characters away from their status quo. The King of Cadwin all but dares Tetra Gilcrest to find or manufacture evidence so that an attack on the Witchers might be justified. Which leads us to examine the effect of that something new to the status quo, specifically what's different now and also what remains the same. Vesemir chases the mystery of the Elvish-speaking Leshen, and Philevangel fails to convince him to take on a job pro bono. Then we visit young Vesemir, just as his life is about to change forever. We move along to the discovery that things are less than ideal, or else we explore how badly things are. Both scenarios are common. Young Vesemir is restless in his servile life, with no qualms to risk severe punishment for his own gain. And Deglin arrives in town as the symbol for everything Vesemir wants. Next, our characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, and this is always smaller in scope than what the third act will demand. Young Vesemir requests that he remain with the Witcher, and receives an intimate look at how they operate. Then we run through a brief checklist of the main story elements that we can expect during this journey. Monster hunting for profit and the lifestyle, the arrogance and elitism of Witchers, and Vesemir's dream of being more than a servant. Which brings us to the brief events that launches our characters into the wild jungle of the second act. It's also called the oh shit moment. Young Vesemir runs away from Ilyana and everything he knows. Oh shit. We follow our characters as they learn the new rules and expectations of their journey. These are always distinct to the narrative at play. Young Vesemir braves the wild to reach Kaer Morhen, and older Vesemir gives us a brief overview of how the Witcher business model works. The rising hatred of Witchers reaches their halls, and Deglin laments the shrinking of the ranks all around. Next, our characters showcase their ability to grow and progress, and this is typically an external or physical beat, rather than internal or emotional. Lady Zerps proves herself a hurdle to Tetra's anti-Witcher agenda, and Vesemir takes to his role as fencing instructor to the recruits. Then our characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. Young Vesemir realizes that he's the only one who chose this life. Then he and the recruits face their first threats, which proves much more fatal than life at Kaer Morhen. We endure the anxiety as our characters face an escalation of problems and complications. Young Vesemir watches his fellow recruits get ripped to shreds by savage creatures, then suffers from the immense grief of their sudden loss. Next, our characters evolve internally or emotionally, and they do this by using elements of the plot or story, which they've gathered and learned so far. Young Vesemir finds his way deeper into Kaer Morhen, where Rydrick explains the relationship between mages and witchers. Then Vesemir learns of the true all-around brutality of this lifestyle. Then our journey-weary characters come to terms with their ongoing struggles. Moments and elements from the first act are used to gauge their progress. Young Vesemir endures his first act desire of becoming a witcher through an unforgiving mutation montage, while Ilyana recounts the tragedies that wiped out their Act 1 home, destroying everything he once knew, which results in a brief event that strikes at our protagonist's core conflict. With nowhere left to go but forward, Vesemir's transition into a witcher is successful. We receive needed answers alongside our characters, which relate to both their external journeys and their internal conflicts. Vesemir listens as the next batch of recruits fight to survive their own mutations, while Tetra's anti-witcher agenda finally provokes some action. Next, our characters complete their smaller scope objective, yet discover that their victory is shallow or altogether meaningless without also completing a larger scope objective. Vesemir and Ilyana finally reunite, but she's not the same woman as before, in station as well as responsibility. Then he's cleared of his so-called crimes, but it places Tetra at his side. Then our characters face an existential conflict that wounds their sense of self, their worldly identity, or their physical journey. Vesemir and Tetra openly flaunt their contempt for one another, and she explains her foundational and unshakable hatred for his kind. Then her magic reveals a hidden location that pulls them deeper into the mystery. We celebrate with our protagonist in light of an undeniable win, which is always related to the rebirth in some way. Vesemir and Tetra find Kitsu and her den, further unraveling the mystery. Then the two work together to take down a mutated basilisk. Next, our characters suffer a grand loss. This is always connected to their newfound inability to quit their journey. Kitsu escapes the pair, thanks to powerful illusions. Then Vesemir teases out her hybrid life, and Tetra finds the horde of missing elven girls that Philevandrel spoke of earlier. Then we experience a thematic freefall, as the main story elements are ramped up and thrown into upheaval. Philevandrel returns as a fresh prisoner of Kitsu's. Tetra accuses the Witchers of creating the hybrid abomination, and Vesemir stands between her and Philevandrel, rekindling all their animosities. Then Tetra buries the Den of Horrors with snow and magic, while Vesemir says goodbye to Ilyana again, which forces us into a brief event that robs our protagonist of seemingly any hope of success. Tetra reveals to us that she's been in league with Kitsu and has been orchestrating almost everything. We watch our characters realize that they cannot return to their first act selves, and they turn to face the larger scope objective. The King of Cadwin beheads Luca, declaring open hostilities on all Witchers. Deglin confesses about Kitsu and all the hybrid abominations he's created, and a bloodthirsty mob descends upon Kaer Morhen. Next, our characters use the major swings of the story and their personal journeys to move towards the climax. The swamp monsters return for something a little meatier than recruits, and we're treated to a Monster on Monster Hunter action sequence extravaganza. Then Vesemir reminds us all what kind of a badass he really is. Then the final confrontation plays out between our protagonist and characters against the antagonistic force. Vesemir enters the final standoff, fights through Kitsu's illusions to find reality, then battles Tetra one-on-one Witcher vs. Mage, which culminates in a brief moment where our protagonist finally, and oftentimes metaphorically, overcomes their place in the Act 1 status quo. Vesemir hesitates just enough to fool Tetra, and goes in for the kill. We experience the direct aftermath of the climax. This can give our characters a moment to reflect on the situation, or else wind down the action with a coda. Kitsu's second illusion fades, revealing the unintended horror of Vesemir's actions. Then Deglin puts down Tetra before she executes Vesemir. Next, we touch base with additional characters, typically to contrast them against the new status quo. Kaer Morhen burns, destroying the sins of Deglin and burying most of the Witchers. And Ilyana finally sits lakeside just before she bleeds out. Then we conclude with a tight focus on our protagonist, specifically to contrast them against how we met them at the opening. Vesemir rallies the last of the Witcher recruits to keep their order alive, with a tiny, bald Geralt amid their depleted numbers. And there you have it. Kwang Ilhan's 2021 animated prequel, The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf, adheres perfectly to the 29-point story structure every step of the way. It used dialogue and imagery well to deliver a powerfully tragic tale. Now let's move on from hunting creatures in the wild to deducing who is the creature in the room. Join me next time for Josh Rubin's 2021 claustrophobic horror, Werewolves Within. As always, thank you so much for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and consider commenting on and sharing this video to help the channel find its audience. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you next time.